What's up, nerds? It's Zach the Goblin here. Warhammer 40k is such an amazingly interesting universe, but it has so much lore, you might be stuck on where to even start. A lot of people will probably start with the Horus Heresy, but with over 50 books, it might feel like a daunting task. That is where this series comes in. I will be explaining the plot of each Horus Heresy book. This is for people who want to get into the series, but don't necessarily have the time to read all of the books, people who are jumping around the series, but maybe want some added context, or even people who just want a quick refresher. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to see more books explained. And let me know your favorite Warhammer books in the comments below. Without further ado, this is the Horus Heresy Explained Quickly, Book 3, Galaxy in Flames, by Ben Counter. "I was there," said Titus Cassar, his wavering voice barely reaching the back of the chamber. "I was there the day that Horus turned his face from the Emperor." This book starts with Titus Cassar giving a sermon to the congregation of the Lectitio Divinitatis. Titus Cassar being a Moderati Primus of the battle titan, the Dies Irae. As a quick aside, I really like that this book starts with a callback to the first book, with the same kind of "I was there." But in the first book, it was Garviel Loken saying, "I was there. I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor." And I really like that because these first three books were meant to be kind of read like back to back, whereas the other Horus Heresy books you can kind of jump around. These three books were meant to be together. So I think with starting this book in a similar way, it kind of puts a nice little end cap on the trilogy. So after the previous book, Horus has completely fallen to chaos, and only a few of the Primarchs know about it, those being Angron of the World Eaters, Mortarion of the Death Guard, and Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children. I'm pretty sure Lorgar and the Word Bearers also know, but I don't remember it being explicitly stated in this book, nor do they play a super prominent role. The book drops hints of other events that are happening in the galaxy that will later be expanded upon in future books that are happening concurrently with this one. Here's a little excerpt as an example. "And my brother Primarchs? What news from them?" asked Horus. "We have been unable to confirm contact with the blessed Sanguinius," replied Ingmei Sing. "And Leman Russ has sent no word of his campaign against the Thousand Suns." Horus laughed, a harsh chthonic bark, and said, "That doesn't surprise me. The wolf has his head, and he'll not easily be distracted from teaching Magnus a lesson." These little teasers, taking place in their own books, that will eventually get their own videos. So the fleet is heading to the Istvan system, more specifically Istvan 3, to quash a rebellion against the Imperium. Garviel Loken meets up with Kirill Cinderman and Mercediolatin, and Kirill Cinderman basically being like, "Look, Loken, the War Master is definitely killing off people that oppose him." And Loken's like, "Yeah, it definitely seems that way." And Cinderman's like, "Yeah, Carcassy's dead, and other things." And Loken's like, "You mean Keeler?" So after Keeler banished a demon in the previous book, she fell into a deep coma, and now the Lectitio Divinitatis is viewing her as like a saint. Even the skeptical Kirill Cinderman is like, "Yeah, she definitely is." This is interrupted by Malakhurst, the War Master's equerry, who's like, "Hey, yo, this isn't allowed. The War Master's edict definitely says no civilians are allowed out and about on the ship." But Loken being like, "No, they're remembrancers. I can vouch for them. They're okay." With Malakhurst basically being like, "Yeah, I don't care." Then the former bodyguard Magard marches into the room with about a dozen soldiers, with the remembrancers being escorted back to their rooms with guards posted out to make sure that they don't leave again. This kind of shows that the ship is basically on martial law right now. It's not good. Tensions are high. Around the same time, Chief Astropath Ingmei Sing is being questioned about the saint, Euphrates Keeler, and her whereabouts. And Ingmei Sing is like, "Oh, okay, this isn't good." So on the down low, she sends a telepathic message to Kirill Cinderman being like, "You must save her, you gotta help her." So Kirill Cinderman ends up tricking the guards to let him out, and then goes and recruits Titus Cassar, who goes and recruits another Moderati, Jonah Arukin, who reluctantly agrees to help. So they go to get the sleeping Euphrates Keeler to take her someplace to hide her, because they're assuming that she's going to be killed off next. And as they get to a room, lo and behold, they were right. They see Magard coming down the hallway. They're trying to escape him. They try and fail to shoot him. So Magard approaches, firing his pistol at them. And they're like, "Oh, we're dead." But then they weren't dead. The bullets almost being frozen right in front of where they were fired. They look over and Euphrates had awakened, eyes wide with terror, with her hand extended in front of her. Another miracle. So they got the hell out of there and hid Euphrates Keeler, who had fallen back into a coma, with loyal members of the Lectitio Divinitatis. While Loken and Torgotten are waiting for the War Master's conclave, they are talking about all the shady stuff that's going on, but then they happen to chance upon Karn of the World Eaters, who are also here for the conclave. And they're going back and forth, but then Karn kind of shines a spotlight on, while all the legions do things differently, they share many similarities in that they're all warriors. Here is a little excerpt. "The War Master believes it is important So I see. But all legions do things differently, laughed Karn, clapping Loken on his shoulder guard. As one honest man to another. Your own legion has as many detractors as admirers. Too damn superior, the lot of you. The War Master has high standards, said Loken. So does Angron, I assure you, said Karn, and Loken was surprised to hear a note of wariness in Karn's voice. The Emperor knew that sometimes the best course of action is to let the World Eaters do what we do best. The War Master knows it too, otherwise we would not be here. It may be distasteful to you, Captain, but if it were not for warriors like mine, the Great Crusade would have foundered long ago. There we must agree to disagree, said Loken. I could not do what you do. Karn shook his head. You are a warrior of the Astartes, Captain. If you had to kill every living thing in a city to ensure victory, you would do it. We must always be prepared to go farther than our enemy. All the legions know it. The World Eaters just preach it openly. So at the council, Horus greets Angron of the World Eaters, Mortarion of the Death Guard, and then Captain Eidolon is standing in for Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children. So they discuss everybody's different roles for the taking of the Choral City on Ishvan III. With Eidolon at one point trying to scold Angron, who, if you know anything about Angron, that's kind of a dumb thing to do, with Angron snapping at him, basically being like, hey, you little bitch, if you talk to me again without my permission, I swear I will kill you where you stand. You are not an equal to us. Even like Horus afterwards is like, okay, enough, Angron. But like Eidolon, he's right. You are low-key a bitch. After the council, Horus has a secret meeting with Erebus of the Word-Bearers and Regulus of the Mechanicum. Horus found out that Ingmei Sing betrayed him, so they're there to sacrifice her to Chaos to kind of seal the pact between Horus and the forces of Chaos. With Horus saying, if you give me the power to do what I need to do on Ishvan, then I will pledge myself to your cause. Down on Ishvan Extremis, the Death Guard and the Emperor's Children are fighting to capture what they believe is a comm station, but what is actually a temple. We follow best boy Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children fight against the forces of the Ishvanians, who are commanded by a Warsinger, which is a Chaos Psyker who attacks using the power of really bad singing. Tarvitz makes his way to the top alongside Eidolon and Lucius and sees one of his old friends, an important character, Captain Nathaniel Garro of the Death Guard. And he's like, oh hell yeah, that's my dude. And then all of a sudden, the Warsinger comes out and just unleashes a sonic blast on Garro. When the dust settles, Garro is sliding off a ledge, with Tarvitz saving him, pulling his bloodied body out of danger. Tarvitz is like, oh hell nah, that's my dude. So Tarvitz makes it up there and Eidolon is already fighting him, but he's on the ropes. Tarvitz is able to distract the Warsinger, and with the distraction, Eidolon gets up and screams at the Warsinger, crippling her, allowing him to score the final blow. And Tarvitz is like, wait a minute, we can't do that? What's going on here? Later on the ship, Tarvitz confronts Eidolon, is like, yo, so I really gotta know what that was. So Eidolon relents and takes him to Fabius Bile. It turns out is upgrading some of the Emperor's Children, and they extend the offer to Saul Tarvitz. But Saul, being a straight shooter, is like, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's wiggity whack. You guys are kind of whack. I'm not gonna do this. I'm good. And they let Saul leave under the condition that he doesn't speak about this to anyone, which he agrees to. Later, Saul Tarvitz is wandering around and he finds himself near the Hall of Rites and sees Rylanor, an ancient dreadnought. Rylanor being like, why aren't you with your soldiers? And Saul's like, it's because I wanted to speak with you. I wish to take the vacant spot of Eidolon's senior staff officer aboard the ship. When Saul realized that Eidolon wasn't going to be part of the assault force, he's like, I gotta find a way to keep an eye on him because something is up. This is all weird. Rylanor, also knowing something is up, agrees and says he'll make sure that happens, and Rylanor himself will take Tarvitz's spot in the attack force, with Tarvitz suddenly certain that Rylanor wanted him to stay on the ship. So as he watches the ancient dreadnought leave, he wonders if he'll ever see him again. Part 2 starts off with everybody fighting in the Choral City. Lucius is leading a group of Emperor's Children to attack the Presenter's Palace, going after the rebel governor Vardis Prahl, Garviel Loken and Nero Vipus, crashing into the city via drop pods, the World Eaters led by Captain Erlin, unexpectedly being dropped in the midst of a bunch of civilians who start attacking them, so they have to kill all these civilians. We then cut back to the Emperor's Children's ship, the Andronius, where Saul Tarvitz is kind of sneaking around. He's feeling kind of suspicious because he can tell that the ship is moving, but the only reason that it should be moving is to move into position for an orbital bombardment. But Saul's like, that can't be right because we have a lot of people down there. We can't just bomb the planet. All of our guys will die. So he travels down to where the guns are kept, and he notices that they're all being armed with warheads. A Mechanicum adept sees him and comes up and is like, hey, what you doing here? Is everything good? And Tarvitz is like, oh yeah, no, definitely. I'm just here to make sure everything's proceeding normally. And the Adept's like, oh hell yeah. No, definitely. All the bombardment cannons are loaded with air-bursting warheads loaded with virus bombs, as specified in our order of battle. And Tarvitz is like, virus bombs? Shit, that's not good. The Adept's like, yo, you good? Tarvitz like, no, yeah, definitely. Yeah, carry on, carry on. And as soon as he gets out of there, he's like, oh, I gotta warn these guys. So he goes and steals a Thunderhawk so he can fly down to the surface to warn everybody. Word gets back to Eidolon that Tarvitz stole a Thunderhawk and is going down to the Choral City. And he figures out, oh, he's going to warn him. And he's like, well, we can't have that. So I'm gonna send 2 fighters to go and blow him up. Then it cuts over to the bridge of the Eisenstein, where Death Guard Captain Nathaniel Garrow is in charge, having been denied a place on the assault force due to his injuries. And he gets reports about the runaway Emperor's Children's vessel, so he plots a course to intercept. And he hails him down on comms and he's like, yo, what are you doing? Stand down. And Saul's like, Nathaniel? Oh, baby, is it good to hear your voice right now? And Nathaniel's like, dude, what are you doing? I have orders to shoot you down. And Saul's like, yo, dude, you gotta trust me. We're homies, we're cool. You gotta trust me. And Nathaniel's like, yeah, that's my battle brother, my sworn honor brother. I gotta do what I gotta do. So he ends up shooting down the 2 pursuing ships. So Tarvitz tells Nathaniel everything that's going on. And Nathaniel's like, damn, that is heavy. I gotta do something. I gotta go. I'm gonna leave and warn the Emperor. I'm gonna try to sneak out of here with my ship and get out of here. Back on Horus's warship, the Vengeful Spirit, Euphrates Keeler wakes up in horror, realizing the betrayal that's about to occur. So she tells Choral Cinderman that he needs to tell everybody. So he gives this big, impassioned speech that is spread throughout the Vox channels that the War Master has betrayed the Emperor. And then Malagurst hears this and he's like, Horus, you gotta hear this. This isn't good. And Horus is like, damn, you right? This should have been taken care of already. Well, I guess we just gotta kill all of the Remembrancers now. So back on the surface, everybody's still fighting. The Sons of Horus are still having issues linking back up due to their drop pods kind of being scattered. Lucius finally makes it to the palace and ends up killing the governor. And that gives him a sick battle boner because this guy is really just horny for fighting. Saul Tarvitz lands in his Thunderhawk and he gets out and he's near the palace and he sees Lucius and he's like, yo, you'll never believe this, but we've been betrayed. Virus bombs may or may not be coming down to kill us all, and it's gonna be really shitty, so we gotta do something about this right now. Lucius being like, what? Fulgrim would never have me killed. I'm way too sick. I would have followed him into hell. And Tarvitz is just like, yeah, but I wouldn't have. And you're my friend, so obviously, you're being punished because you're my friend. We don't have time for this. We gotta get off the surface. We gotta go down into the catacombs underneath the palace. Pronto. So with everybody warned, people start making their way underground trying to get out of there before the bombs drop. Most of the Emperor's children and the Sons of Horus were able to get to shelter, while a lot of the World Eaters and the Death Guard didn't and were killed by the virus bombs. But Horus wasn't done. With the atmosphere being filled with all the decomposing combustible gases, he orders an orbital strike, which sets everything ablaze. By the time the echoes of the recoil had faded on the War Master's flagship, billions had died on Ishvan 3. On the Titan, the Dies Irae, the Princeps was warned by Horus ahead of time, so he had everything closed off and sealed. And Titus Cassar noticed that and is like, well, that's fishy. But then they got orders from Horus to fire at the remaining Death Guard. Cassar's like, no, I refuse to do that. So him and the Princeps argue, and they end up firing upon each other, with both of them missing. And Titus turning to Jonah Rukin, his friend, pleading for his help. With me or against me, Jonah, said Cassar levelly. The Emperor's faithful or his enemy, your choice. With Jonah choosing the enemy and killing his friend, Titus Cassar. While all of this is happening, back on the Vengeful Spirit, Horus has a little get-together for the Remembrancers to show them something. With Euphrates Keeler, Mercedes Olatin, and Choral Cinderman, all recognizing it for the trap that it is. And Horus shows them everything. The devastation of the virus bomb, followed by the further devastation of the orbital strike. With Horus just looking over being like, yeah, this is some sick shit, isn't it? With everybody being rightfully horrified. Finally, Euphrates Keeler being like, we gotta go. Her leading them over to an Astartes, Yakton Cruz. Cruz being an older Astarte who was around for a long time, people never really paid him much mind. He was called the half-herd, because people only half paid attention to him. But he was a friend of Loken, and Loken asked him to look after these Remembrancers for him. So they go up to him, and Kurz recognizes them and is like, oh, Loken actually told me to look out for you guys while he was gone. Euphrates then turns to him and says, you are half-heard no longer. You have an important task ahead of you. We need to get out of here. So they make their way to the embarkation deck to find a Thunderhawk. But as they approach, out steps Maggard. So him and Cruz start fighting, with Maggard getting the upper hand at first. Each of them scoring blows, but then they are locked in a struggle that it looks like Maggard's gonna win. But then Choral Cinderman just comes up and shoots Maggard, finally giving Cruz the upper hand, and he is able to finish off Maggard. So they fly away and are directed by Euphrates Keeler to the Eisenstein and Nathaniel Garro, which will be expanded upon in later books. Later on, Horus is pissed because once Angron found out that there are some loyalists still alive, he decides without any orders to take a bunch of World Eaters and go and purge them himself. Horus just being like, oh my god, he's so hard to deal with, why would he do that? And everyone around him being like, well, he's a World Eater, what did you expect? So Horus is forced to support Angron and deploys Emperor's Children and Death Guard to back him up, but is ultimately still frustrated because this went from a single wipeout to a protracted ground war, which was not what he wanted. Angron and his soldiers seem to be specifically targeting the loyalist World Eaters on Ishvan III. Saul Tarvitz, who is still with Captain Erlin's World Eaters, is ordered by the captain to get out of here. This isn't your fight. With Tarvitz being hesitant, saying, Emperor's Children never run, and the captain saying, they do from this, when all of a sudden, Angron enters the fray. He was a monster of legend, huge and terrible. The Primarch's hideous face was twisted in hatred, his huge chain axes battered and stained with decades of bloodshed. As the mighty Primarch landed, World Eaters dropped from their other gunships. Thousands of World Eaters loyal to the War Master followed their Primarch into the Choral City, accompanied by the war cries that echoed Angron's own bestial howl as he charged into his former brethren. Then cuts to Loken and Torgotten, seeing dropships land in the distance, knowing that Abaddon and little Horus Aximen will be coming for them, and they decide to link up with the Emperor's Children under Saul Tarvitz. So it shoots forward a little bit in time, and turns out Tarvitz is actually sick as a leader, and he is organizing the troops, and they are repelling wave after wave of traitor attacks. Tarvitz just being like, we gotta buy time for Garro, we need to make sure that he has enough time to go and warn the Emperor. So Saul Tarvitz, who is just seen as a line officer, is finally given a chance to show his stuff. Lucius, on the other hand, is getting really jealous that Tarvitz is getting all of this glory, because he's like, it should be me, damn it. But he is distracting himself, being just super horny for battle, and eventually kills the Emperor's Children chaplain, Charmosian. And with his resentment for Tarvitz growing, he actually, on the down low, takes the chaplain's helmet and sneaks away to contact Eidolon, telling him, hey, do I have a deal for you? Back on the Vengeful Spirit, Horus hears that the group of Remembrancers, along with Yakton Cruz, got away and have boarded the Eisenstein. And Horus is like, damn, that's not good. Well, surely we captured them aboard the Eisenstein, right? And Malagurus is like, well, actually, they tried to escape. And Horus is like, well, okay, they tried. That means they didn't get away, right? And Malagurus is like, well, they got away, but they took a lot of damage, so I don't think they're going to be able to handle the warp travel, so I think it's okay. And Horus is like, ugh. So then Horus is like, well, we don't have a lot of time now. We got to get this over with before the Emperor hears about my treachery. Send down the Mournival, baby. So on the surface, Loken is talking with Tarvitz, and Tarvitz is like, oh yeah, I heard that, Abaddon and Aximan might be coming down here. And Loken's like, oh shit? So he finds out where they're going to be landing, and then he goes to find Torgotten, because we're like, okay, we got to take care of this. Mournival versus Mournival. Battle Royale, baby. There is a quick little scene at this time between Fulgrim and Horus, where Fulgrim just got back from failing to convert Ferrus Manus to their side. And Horus is pissed because he's like, without him, this isn't going to go well for us. I can't have him going against us. Fulgrim's like, well, what do you want me to do? Kill him? Horus is like, yeah, duh. We're kind of evil. What do you think? And Fulgrim's like, damn, you right, my bad. Which again, will be expanded upon in a different book. So Loken and Torgotten are battling their way through World Eaters, trying to get to where they know that Abaddon and Aximen are going to be. Then all of a sudden, Loken is attacked by none other than Karn himself. Karn, at this point, is a caricature of his former self. At this point, he has been implanted with the Butcher's nails, and the nails are biting. Karn, said Loken through gritted teeth, as the World Eater forced the chain axe's whirling teeth towards his face. This is not the man I knew. What have you become? As their eyes met, Loken saw Karn's soul and despaired. He saw the warrior, who had sworn oaths of brotherhood and pledged himself to the crusade, as he himself had done. The warrior who had seen the terrors and tragedies of the crusade as well as its victories. And he saw the dark madness that had swamped in that bloodshed, and betrayals yet to be enacted. I am the Eightfold Path, snapped Karn, his every word punctuated by a froth of blood. No! Shouted Loken, pushing the World Eater away. It doesn't have to be this way. It does, said Karn. There is no way off the path. We must always go further. The humanity drained from Karn's face, and Loken knew that the World Eater was truly gone, and that only in death would this battle end, and they have a desperate fight, with Karn gaining the upper hand, grinding Loken down into the mud. But Loken heard the rumble of an engine and the glare of floodlights out behind Karn's outline. Knowing what was coming, he pushed Karn up as far as he could, until he felt the huge impact as the Land Raider's dozer blade slammed into Karn, the sharpened prongs at its base punching through the World Eater's chest. Afterwards, Torgotten caught up with him, and he's like, yo, was that Karn? And Loken's like, yeah. Like, is he dead? Loken's like, I don't even really know. Let's get out of here. While this is going on, Lucius meets with Eidolon in secret, with Eidolon being like, yo, you got a lot of balls meeting me here. And Lucius being like, hey, I can help you. I can give you the traitors and Tarvitz on a silver platter. I'll kill Tarvitz myself. Damn. And Eidolon's like, well, what do you want? I just want back in the Legion. I can't stand to see somebody as undeserving as Tarvitz getting all the glory that should rightfully be mine. So they come to terms, and Lucius's betrayal begins. Eidolon launches an attack, penetrating the palace, where he massacres the wounded loyalists. Tarvitz finds Lucius among corpses of loyalist Emperor's children and is like, the fuck, dude? So they're fighting, but Tarvitz is severely outmatched and he is on the ropes. But then he remembers what Loken did when he beat Lucius in the practice cages and just punches him right in the face. And that buys him enough time where his squad comes up and they just start firing on Lucius, although he unfortunately escapes. Tarvitz then goes back and rallies all the troops, ultimately repelling Eidolon's assault. Loken and Torgotten finally reach the Parliament House, and with it, their destined fight against Abaddon and little Horus Aximand. They bust in with Loken condemning them as betrayers, and then they have some back and forth, with both sides being positive that they are in the right. Once they all realize that they were at an impasse, Abaddon says, enough of this talking, and charges Loken, with Aximand and Torgotten squaring off against each other. Aximand having some obvious trepidation with having to battle his sworn brothers to the death, with Aximand even saying at one point, just like the practice cages, Tarek. No, said Torgotten, nothing like that. Things were a little less reserved on Abaddon's side, with him not even hesitating to try to kill Loken. Loken's only saving grace was that Terminator armor was huge. It made a man into a walking tank, but what it added in protection, it lost in speed, with Loken being able to outmaneuver him and striking at one of the cracked pillars supporting the ceiling, which tumbled down onto Abaddon, burying him in rubble. Loken turned around just in time to see Torgotten on his knees, blood raining from his body and his limbs shattered. He saw what would happen next, even as he screamed at his former brother to stay his hand. Even over the crash of rubble being displaced as Abaddon forced himself free of the collapsed statues, he heard Aximand's final words with a terrible clarity. I'm sorry, said Aximand, and the sword slashed down against Torgotten's neck. Loken dropping to his knees in horror at the sight of Torgotten's head parting from his shoulders. Loken was beyond himself with rage and sadness, and Abaddon's like, yo, this is my time, and crushed Loken's chest with his energized fist. But before he could deliver the death blow, the Parliament building exploded, as the Titan, the Dies Irae, smashed it into ruin on its way to destroy the other loyalist Astartes. Abaddon and Aximand escaping, and Loken smiling as the building collapsed around him. And I'd like to end this video with an excerpt. Loken couldn't move his legs. Every heartbeat was agony in his lungs as the muscles of his chest ground against splinters of bone. He coughed up clots of blood with every breath, and he was sure that each one would be his last, as if the will to live seeped from his body. Through a crack in the rubble pinning him to the ground, Loken could see the dark gray sky. He saw streaks of fire dropping through the clouds and closed his eyes as he realized that they were the first salvos of an orbital bombardment. Death was raining down on the Choral City for the second time, but this time it wouldn't be anything as exotic as a virus. High explosives would bring the city down and put a final, terrible exclamation mark at the end of the Battle of Ishvan III. Such a display was typical of the War Master. It was a final epitaph that would leave no one in any doubt as to who had won. The first orange blossoms of fire burst over the city. The ground shook. Buildings collapsed in waves of fire, and the streets boiled with flame once more. The ground shuddered as though in the grip of an earthquake, and Loken felt his prison of debris shift. Hard spikes of pain buffeted him as flames burst across the remains of the Parliament building. Then darkness fell at last, and Loken felt nothing else. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you again. Goblin out.